We have here a 2006 Volkswagen Beetle. It's a 1.9 liter TDI with a letter code BEW, and the customer brought it to us for some miscellaneous stuff, AC and other things, and it just now quit running. And I want to show our diagnostic steps. We've already taken some of the steps. As you can see, there's some tools across the front here, but let me show you that it won't start first. And of course it starts. Anyway, well, does that make me look foolish when it starts when I think it's not going to? Well, we started this vehicle up and we drove it in the bay and we were diagnosing the AC and some other things, and then we shut it off for some reason, and then we went to start it again and it wouldn't start at all. The lighting in here makes me look really red. My voice is cutting out also. But anyway, what we had was a crank no start, and it would crank and crank and crank and crank and crank and not start. And so the first diagnostic step that we took, what we ended up doing is pulling the fuel line off over here and checking for fuel flow when the fuel pump comes on. And we'll do that real quick, and I'll show you. Okay, after an interruption, I'm back on this Beetle. And remember, it wouldn't start at one point, but last time we tried it did start. So, and I've already diagnosed this car. I'm only going through the motions here to show you guys the diagnostic process. And since this is starting, I'm just going to show you what we did during the time that it wasn't starting. So what we're going to do is test the fuel pump by measuring the amount of fuel that comes out at the fuel filter. But what I'm just going to do is pull this hose off, put this in here, and then I'll have Bob turn the car on, and that way we can see how much fuel comes out. Okay, go ahead and turn it on. Turn it off. Turn it on. Turn it off. Turn it on. Go ahead and crank it. Shut it off. Now, I'm sure you guys could see that, but it wasn't really putting out much fuel during the key on cycle, but it was putting out some, but it certainly put out a bunch during when it was starting and running or when it was cranking. But here's the diagnostic method. As soon as I did this the first time, I could smell that it wasn't diesel. It smells nasty, like old gasoline. It smells like tarry, old gasoline. You know, when gasoline sits for a while, for a long time, like a year, it gets really smelly like tar, and that's what this smells like. Hey, Bob, can I use your cigarette lighter?
Yes, sir.
So a quick test I do sometimes to determine if it's gasoline, although I can smell it. It doesn't really smell like gasoline. It smells like turpentine or kerosene maybe. But a quick test that I do to determine if gasoline is poured out there like that, you might even be able to see it in color, but diesel fuel won't do that. And I'll show you. Let me go grab some diesel fuel. Just pan from there
next to
over
it.
to the right.
Yep.
So here I have some diesel fuel. It may say gasoline on the side of it. I'm sorry. It actually says kerosene, but it's diesel fuel. And I can try as hard as I want, but diesel fuel does not burn easily like that. if I soaked it in a rag and I got it hot, if I soaked it in a rag, the fire of the rag burning would get the diesel fuel hot enough to where vapor would come off of it and that vapor would burn. But that's not diesel fuel right there. That is. Okay, so what we're going to do on this in order to get the bad fuel out is we're going to go underneath the back seat. Actually, we is going to be the cameraman, Bob. He's going to do it. And he's going to pull the back seat up. There's a small plate there. He'll remove that, and he's going to jumper voltage to the connection at the fuel pump. How do you know which wires to jumper to, Bob?
The fatter of the two, to be the fatter two of the bunch.
Why is that?
Well, larger wires carry a larger load.
So that would indicate to you that it's the fuel pump.
Yes, sir.
So we'll do that, and we'll video some more once he gets it apart. So Bob has a hose ran from there down into there, and he has the boost box in here. That's how he's going to power the fuel pump, and he's back probed on both those the large leads there. If you need to know, they're the ones on the outside. The small wires are the ones for the sensor, and the large wires are the ones for the pump. Now, one of them's brown, I assume, right? So the brown one is a ground. And all we're going to do here is flick this switch on. That should start pumping the pump. Up there is our Volkswagen Beetle that had gasoline in it when it's a diesel. I did not take any more footage of the car. We pumped the gasoline contaminated fuel out of it, and we put diesel in its place, and we drove the car thoroughly. We have even, the customer okayed us to do a timing belt on it, so we have done a significant amount of more work with further road tests, and the car has continued to run. We want to point out that most TDIs with gasoline in them will fail to run and won't start up like this one did. This one just must have had just the right amount of diesel fuel in it where it runs sometimes, not other times. I also want to point out that this car was smoking a lot, and taking the contaminated fuel out of it did seem to correct the smoking problem as well, and this car should be good. Obviously the front end needs to be painted and stuff like that, but this car should be good and reliable for the customer. I do have another video on fuel contamination, and if this was an ALH car, it wouldn't have a pump in the tank. You just simply disconnect the fuel line at the fuel filter. You wouldn't even need to pull the backside apart, and then you hook vacuum to it, and you can suck the fuel out with vacuum. So a fuel contamination problem isn't the end of the world. I don't think this car suffered any long-term effects of it being contaminated. And most of the ones that I've dealt with that had fuel contamination, whether it be a BEW like this one, an ALH, or a common rail TDI, the later ones. Even my own car, my wife put gasoline in my ALH TDI, and then there was no long-term effects of that either. So certainly don't be scared if you misfuel your car. You should not attempt to drive it. If you do misfuel your car, just tow it to a shop and have them suck the fuel out of it and change the fuel filter. Then after a quick reprime, it should start up and run just fine. If you enjoyed this video or you learned something from it, click the like button. And if you want to donate to the continual production of these videos, find the donate icon on my website at www.kansascitytdi.com. And if you want to watch some more of my videos, there'll be one right there and one right there. And don't forget to subscribe right there. Thanks for watching.